The story begins in a large, rainy city inside a massive corporate building. Shortly after, a young man gets a stack of papers thrown in his face as he introduces himself as Soma Kazuya. His boss is furious with his work and throws all the documents in the air, yelling at the young man. With a forced smile, Kazuya apologizes and takes full responsibility for the mistake. But another supervisor, a bald man in sunglasses, doesn't like his smile and asks if that's how he was taught. Then he tells the young man to read everything and warns him that he's not going home until the job is done. Without complaining, the young man starts picking up all the papers that were thrown on the office floor. Meanwhile, the bosses scold him and tell him to keep his eyes open next time. The protagonist narrates that at work, besides his normal tasks, there was one more thing. At that moment, the bald man thanks him for taking the blame for him once again. He justifies himself by saying he's too busy with meetings to be able to write proposals. Apparently, one of Kazuya's tasks was to take the blame for his superior's mistakes. Seizing the moment, the young man asks about his promotion to a full-time position. However, the boss just says they'll talk later and tells him to focus on finishing his work. The clock strikes 2 in the morning, and the young man is exhausted, wanting just a short break. Even though he wanted a break, he couldn't take one, because he was the only one left in the office. From the window, he observes the city lights and thinks about how beautiful the night view really is. But in this place, if you have no value, you are simply discarded as if you were trash. With that thought, Kazuya returns to his desk and continues the work he was given. Suddenly, exhaustion takes over, and the protagonist simply passes out on his desk. All of a sudden, Kazuya wakes up sitting in a chair, floating in the middle of the sky. Completely confused, he wonders where on earth he has ended up now. In front of him, a mysterious woman begins to list his personal information. Holding a book, she reveals that the cause of his passing was overworking. With a smile, the white-haired lady says he is exactly who she was looking for. The protagonist, still not understanding anything, asks what is happening there. She then explains that to live, a person needs 3 things: money, love, and cats. But right after, the girl simply grabs a giant 100-ton hammer. Then she says that someone like him has no love and smashes the first golden egg. Next, she also destroys the money egg without any mercy. And finally, the cat's egg is destroyed while the young man begs her to stop. The woman points at him and says she has the perfect title for someone who worked himself to his end. With that, she introduces him as the greatest corporate slave of all time. Hearing that is more painful than his passing, but he remembers he has already passed on. The young man then says he's new to this whole being gone thing and just wants to move on. The girl gets furious with his attitude and slams him to the ground with one move. She yells that he isn't going anywhere because he is being reincarnated as a hero. Still on the ground, the young man finally asks who in the world she is. The lady then introduces herself as Amile, the administrator of another continent. And so, right after his passing, the protagonist ended up in another job interview. In the next moment, the protagonist is thrown through a portal straight into the new world. He starts falling at high speed towards a dark and unknown forest. In a panic, the young man screams in despair, thinking he's going to meet his end again as soon as he lands. With a huge flash of light, Kazuya hits the ground, kicking up a large cloud of dust. Before he can understand what happened, he feels someone grabbing him by the hair. A bandaged hand lifts him off the ground without any gentleness or care. A red-haired woman holds him upside down and asks if the hero doesn't know how to fly. Completely dizzy and confused, the young man can barely process what just happened. At that moment, he finally realizes he was really reincarnated in another world. Walking through bumpy, unpaved streets, he begins to observe the place. The city's architecture looks like it came straight out of a medieval fantasy game. But what catches his attention the most are the injured people lying all around. A little boy holds an axe with an empty gaze and no hope at all. Near him, an old man looks exhausted and completely defeated by life. Kazuya then asks why he only sees elderly people and children around, and the woman explains the situation. She says he needs to see for himself and takes him to the top of a wall. Looking through a crack, the protagonist is shocked by what he is seeing. Outside the walls, a gigantic horde of monsters is prepared to attack. He questions why his journey didn't start in a peaceful beginner's village. The truth is that the Demon King has already conquered the world, and this is humanity's last fortress. And the one resisting is Helga, a general who can barely keep her clothes on. Along with her is a makeshift army composed only of the elderly and the injured. The protagonist thinks this looks like a sure defeat, but he can't complain. So he turns to Helga and asks if she has any strategy for the situation. The redhead then starts to explain the brilliant plan she came up with to win the battle. She shows that the enemy army has 100,000 soldiers, and they only have 100 people. With her precise calculations, the general begins to outline the strategy on the green board. She concludes that if each of them defeats 1,000 enemies, victory is guaranteed. With an ironic thumbs up, the young man thinks she is a complete fool. But Helga is happy, thinking he finally understood her brilliant logic. The protagonist then says there's a small problem with her plan. He asks how exactly they are going to manage to defeat 1,000 enemies each. Her answer is simple: just don't get taken out until you've defeated the 1,000 opponents. Again with the thumbs up, he thinks she's a complete, clueless fool. The redhead gets all flustered and happy for being complimented by him twice. At that moment, the hero feels someone pulling the hem of his coat to get his attention. He looks down and realizes it's an injured little boy talking to him. The boy asks if the goddess would forgive him if he fell before defeating 1000. Meanwhile, a woman argues with a man about what he should do. Kazuya tells the boy to stop wiping his nose on his clothes and to eat more vegetables. Helga claims that the goddess has a plan and that just the two of them will be enough. Meanwhile, at the enemy camp, the Demon King observes the wall from a distance. One of his subordinates informs him that the rebels have just summoned a hero, but she finds it strange that the hero and the general are offering to surrender. The Demon King becomes quite interested in this unexpected news he has received. Back on the wall, the two prepare to go down and face the horde of monsters. Kazuya explains that giving up the high ground to fight is a bad idea. He then asks why she is trembling, and the redhead says it's just an act. Suddenly, the Demon King himself appears right in front of the two heroes. The young man is shocked because the plan to lure out the big boss actually worked. But Helga was already expecting this and prepares for the fight to come. She then activates a strange power in her arm, which begins to glow brightly. With incredible strength, the woman stumps on the ground and cracks the entire wall structure. Then the general yells for them to go and charges towards the enemy army. The redhead runs at high speed, leaving a trail of blue lightning behind her. With no other choice, the hero runs right behind her to provide some support. But halfway there, the protagonist transforms into a ball of darkness. The Demon King's subordinate is confused, not understanding what is happening. Kazuya then appears in front of the enemy army with a different appearance. He kneels and tells the Lord that he has managed to capture the rebel leader. And to complete the act, he offers himself to the Dark Lord as his servant. With a forced smile, the hero promises to work like a slave for his entire life. But the Demon King questions what the benefit of accepting their surrender would be. The protagonist gets tense and realizes the situation might have gotten out of control. Suddenly, Helga's swords are thrown into the air as if she were disarmed. Right after, the general falls to the ground, and one of the weapons sticks into the earth beside her. The Dark Lord then says he will give her a chance to challenge him to a fight. The redhead gets up and faces the powerful enemy before her without fear. Hiding in the bushes, the young man asks the subordinate if he should stay there. He greets the lady and thinks that she is definitely his type of person. Meanwhile, the general holds her sword, which begins to glow with golden energy. With a furious look, the warrior prepares to use her full power in the battle. Surrounded by a powerful aura, she yells that the Demon King will regret this. Kazuya remembers that the goddess had mentioned just how strong Helga really was. Apparently, the general was on the same level as the legendary heroes of the past. In a one-on-one fight, she would be able to defeat even the Demon King. With all her strength, the redhead charges forward to deliver a final blow against the enemy. The clash of their two powers creates a huge explosion of blue and red energy. Impressed, the young man protects himself and says she's like a human missile, she's so fast. Then he asks the subordinate to tell Helga that he always admired her very much. The battle begins with a gigantic explosion of blue energy that destroys everything around it. Helga is shocked because even with all that power, the result was not what she expected. The Demon King simply stops the general's sword using only one of his shadowy hands. He then says he does have regrets because an attack of that level wasn't even worth blocking. Amidst the destruction, the Dark Lord offers her one more chance to fight. It is revealed that the wraps on her arms were actually a seal to contain her power. This demonic binding was created to continuously drain all the warrior's mana. She was supposed to use it until the moment she faced the Demon King to release her full power. When the seal was finally released from her body, all the energy would return at once. And with that, she would have enough mana to overcome any opponent in her path. In the present, the wraps come loose from Helga's body and fly through the skies with great speed. The redhead then begins to control the bindings with her will, using them as weapons. The demonic wraps expand infinitely and spin around the general with power. The Demon King just watches the situation unfold with his glowing red eyes. With a swift movement, the warrior launches the bindings toward her enemy. Seeing the Lord fall back, the young man wonders if it was too soon to surrender to them. The wraps then coil around the Demon King, sealing and absorbing all of his mana at once. Now, with the enemy immobilized, Helga has the perfect chance to finish the fight right there. She says if she can get his eyes, the victory will finally belong to the humans. Her sword rushes forward and strikes the Demon King's eye, which begins to crack. The blade hits the target but reveals it was just a helmet that shatters. With his own hands, the Dark Lord grabs the warrior's sword and stops it. Even with all her strength, the general can't move her weapon a single inch. The protagonist screams desperately for His Majesty to be careful of what's about to happen. Suddenly, an explosion of red and blue energy erupts from the Dark Lord. The wave of power hits the monster army that was right behind him. All the soldiers in the front line are completely wiped out by the attack. The battlefield is covered in thick smoke and chaotic energy. Kazuya gets frustrated and wonders why the goddess chose a useless person like him. He remembers Helga's former companions who promised to fight with her. But in the end, they were all gone, leaving her alone in this war. Even being the only one left, the general doesn't give up and prepares to continue. The enemy's helmet shatters, and he complains that she broke his favorite home. The redhead is in shock as the reflection in his eyes reveals a terrible truth. Completely frozen, she cannot believe what she is seeing in front of her. With a swift move, the Dark Lord grabs the general by the neck. Then he defeats her in a harsh manner and holds her head in his hands. Kneeling on the ground, the hero looks at the scene, horrified, and doesn't understand why. The Demon King has the exact same face as the goddess who summoned him to this world. She then repeats the question she asked before about the merit of accepting his surrender. The protagonist knows he doesn't have time to think about the relationship between the goddess and the Demon King. The blonde subordinate believes there's no valid reason for betrayal and already considers him done for. With contempt, she says goodbye to the young man, calling him a pathetic and worthless comrade. In response to all the pressure of the situation, Kazuya begins to whimper softly. The sound irritates the lady, who turns to him with an expression of disgust and confusion. Then, instead of an answer, the hero simply barks like a dog at the queen. He throws his head back and begins to howl desperately like a lost animal. The subordinate is shocked to see he has given up on apologizing and has become a dog. The Demon Queen finds the hero amusing and asks if he really hates his title that much. With a subtle smile on her face, the villain seems to enjoy the young man's unexpected attitude. The blonde realizes that he chose the one answer Her Majesty would never expect. Then the queen orders him to show the world the honor of being her dog. With a manic smile, the protagonist barks with all his might for his new master. In her final moments, Helga wonders why the goddess chose someone so incompetent. Her last sight is of the hero acting like a dog for the Demon King. A flashback shows what happened right before the protagonist's reincarnation. He's admiring his new leather boots and the complete hero outfit from the goddess. The young man believes all the suffering in his past life was for this moment. With arms wide open, he shouts that he's finally found his true calling. But the goddess cuts him off, telling him to quit being so full of himself and listen to her plan. She reveals that for the last 500 years, every hero she sent was taken out. She says that in a one-on-one fight, he would lose 100% certain. Kazuya suggests summoning multiple heroes at once, but the goddess says it's impossible. Suddenly, a book with an eye calls him an idiot for forgetting the world's rules. Annoyed by the interruption, she punches the book and orders the hero to be quiet. She compares him to an investor trying to beat a huge company with very little money. But with a wicked smile, the goddess reveals she found a bug in this world. She explains that she usually grants a special power, but this time the strategy is different. The rules say only one hero can exist, but what if he could summon heroes from the past? A god's ability is summoning a hero, and the hero's power is granted by the goddess. So she wonders what would happen if she gave that power to a guy with no talent. Kazuya realizes this would be like having every hero all to himself. The goddess shouts that's exactly right, getting super excited about her own plan. With this, they could just overwhelm the Demon Lord with multiple heroes at once. This way, victory would be practically a sure thing, and the world would finally be saved. The young man asks what would happen if the Demon Lord simply ran and hid from the attack. With a serious look, the goddess calls him clumsy for not considering every detail. Then she says she prepared something special, showing him a bottle of golden liquid. The girl explains that a single touch of this potion can paralyze an enemy for a full minute. Hearing this, the protagonist believes he can easily take down the Dark Lord. With a greedy smile, he's already wondering what comes after the victory. He imagines himself ruling the world as the new king, chosen by a god. With a smug grin, the young man says that despite his looks, he's great at management. He even offers to run the world, since he has experience with simulation games. But the goddess yells that he's got it all wrong. His mission is to perish in the end. His mission is simple: reincarnate, find the Demon Lord, summon the heroes, and be eliminated. Furthermore, he must deliver the potion to Helga, who will rule the world in her place. A single tear streams down the hero's face upon hearing his tragic fate. He feels like he's falling all over again and wonders how she could say such a thing. The young man asks if she doesn't care about his feelings just because he's a nobody. Defeated, he turns his back on the goddess, unsure of what to say or do. He realizes that in the end, he gets absolutely nothing for himself. The goddess watches him silently for a moment, her expression a little serious. Suddenly, the white-haired girl bursts into hysterical laughter at his reaction. She then hugs him, saying she has a plan for that and he shouldn't worry. The young man calms down, realizing a goddess wouldn't be like his old boss after all. Then, the goddess reveals he was actually meant to be reincarnated as an ant. To make it worse, he would have been a sterile worker ant with zero ambition. With a swift, cruel motion, the deity simply squishes the tiny insect. But she offers a deal: if he cooperates, he can become a bee in the next life. She explains that even as a sterile worker, it's better than being an ant in the dark. As a bee, he could see the sun and flowers and have a tiny bit of hope. The protagonist then asks if there's any chance he could become human again. Even if his fate is the same as his last life, he'd rather stay a person. Laughing, the goddess says his ancestors lacked the virtue for that to happen. The tension rises between them again, surrounded by towering books. Suddenly, the deity explodes with rage, shouting that he has no right to ask for rewards. With a trembling hand, the young man says he finally understands his true place. Left with no other choice, he raises his hand and agrees to her mission. The protagonist settles into his chair, bracing for whatever comes next. The goddess then transforms and, with open arms, commands him to receive her full power. The process is excruciating and the young man screams in agony, clutching his head. He complains that she never said it would hurt this much, his face contorting in pain. He wonders if she just didn't think it was necessary to warn him about the pain. Meanwhile, the goddess lets out a bored yawn and asks if it's over yet. The goddess announces that the teleportation portal is open and tells him to get a move on. But the protagonist just sits there with a dark aura, his face completely expressionless. With a serious look, he says he's finally realized a certain truth about his life. He explains to the deity that his miserable life wasn't because he didn't try hard enough. The young man had simply entrusted his life to things like rules, justice, and his boss's opinions. He then thanks the goddess for making him realize that to change his worthless life, the by-the-book approach just won't work against an unbeatable foe. The white-haired girl asks if he's lost his mind and what he's muttering about. Suddenly, the protagonist strikes the goddess over the head with the special potion bottle. In a flash, he steps over her unconscious body on the floor. Dazed, the deity wonders what just happened and if he actually hit her with the bottle. She can't believe a commoner like him dared to do that to a goddess. Furious, the entity vows to turn him into a worm for his insolence. Her eye glows red as she promises he'll reincarnate as a disgusting maggot. The goddess screams that he'll spend the rest of his existence buried in filth, just as he deserves. But the young man uses this moment to pour the paralyzing potion all over her. He empties the entire bottle on the fallen goddess, who can't move an inch. The potion meant for the demon lord leaves her completely frozen for 1 minute. Kazuya notes her furious expression is the same one he saw in the mirror every morning. The deity angrily thinks that if she can just endure for 1 minute, she'll be fine. But the protagonist grips her face, preventing her from speaking. He then forces her to drink every last drop of the potion still in the bottle. He says she chose him because she thought someone like him would be easy to control. But the young man declares he won't give her the chance for payback once the minute is up. With a determined gaze, he says he has already decided his own future. He will never again let his life be dictated by someone else's plan. Without hesitation, the hero shoves the bottle into the paralyzed deity's mouth. With this act, he says goodbye to his old, diligent, and obedient self. The young man then unleashes a relentless attack on the goddess, fueled by his pent-up rage. His hands become stained as he continues the merciless assault. Afterward, the protagonist collapses to his knees, completely drained by his actions. He realizes he just took out a goddess and has committed a terrible sin. But since he's capable of this, and his destiny is to be a maggot anyway, the young man has nothing left to fear and can do whatever he pleases from now on. He turns to the portal, swearing to defeat the demon lord by any means necessary. And in doing so, he will live a life more intense than anyone could imagine. He will reign at the very top of this world, becoming the new demon lord in her place. Meanwhile, the magic books are in a panic because the dimensional manager has perished. One of them despairs, realizing there's no contingency plan for this situation. The scene then cuts to the kingdom's capital, Auberville. Kazuya swears to work to the bone in the kingdom's tax department for the demon lord. With a smile, the queen says she hasn't actually given him any assignments yet. The young man gets a smack on the back of the head, confused by the queen's reaction. The other subordinates remark that his position is even lower than a doorman's. The story flashes back 1 month to when Soma first joined the encampment. He's treated like a dog, even forced to jump through a flaming hoop. The blonde subordinate yanks him by a leash, declaring him the queen's dog now. On the ground, the protagonist asks if she even knows what a metaphor is. But the woman replies that the kingdom banned ambiguous expressions long ago. She yells at him to get up, announcing the next training is bite work. The hero wonders what kind of treatment this is for a surrendered enemy general. Suddenly, the blonde woman slaps him across the face for being in the wrong position. After the beating, the young man is left on the ground, completely exhausted and defeated. He recalls that the demon queen was trying to destroy Rockford itself, not its people. The hero remembers the little boy's words, worrying about the goddess. Kazuya admits to himself he was just trying to act cool and put on a brave face. Just then, the subordinate tosses a bowl of cubed meat onto the ground in front of him. She tells him to eat, clarifying that it's officer's food, not dog food. With him still on the ground, the woman decides to offer a small piece of advice. She tells him to follow the queen's orders, and if he's obedient, he might get a chance. From that day on, Soma stopped complaining and began acting like a true servant. He woke up earlier than any military dog, always alert and at the ready. His vigilance was so sharp he once accidentally walked in on the subordinate's bath. More dedicated than any animal, he pushed himself to the limit in his training. He committed himself body and soul to becoming the ultimate guard dog. As a result, he earned the honor of guarding the queen's tent at night. It took human ancestors 4.5 million years to evolve. But it only took Soma 45 days to go from a dog to a captain of the kingdom. One of the subordinates wonders what the queen is planning to do with him. The blonde explains that with no more enemies, the kingdom must focus on internal affairs. With a confident smirk, the protagonist thinks he can't possibly lose this opportunity. Walking through the capital, he feels a little out of place in his new role. The young man thinks if he stands out too much, he could easily become a target. Despite his new title, he hasn't received any instructions from the demon queen. He realizes if things go well, she gets the credit. If they go badly, he takes the blame. The hero refuses to slip back into a loser's mindset and tries to stay positive. He figures that from his perspective at rock bottom, any change is an improvement. He then rings the bell to his new office, hoping for the best. The door swings open, a bright light from within illuminates his face. Two elf women greet him, asking if he's the new captain of the Sixth Squad. The young man blushes at the warm, radiant reception he's receiving. One of the elves takes his hand and invites him inside, saying they've been waiting. As they lead him in, the hero thinks this might be the best job in the world. Completely smitten, he's already wondering what to name their future child. The white-haired elf then calls him Soma-sama and asks him to sign some papers. Our hero completely misreads the situation, thinking it's a marriage proposal, leaving the girl confused. The other elf explains that this makes him captain, so now he can pass on in peace. Suddenly he's in an execution yard with two guards aiming spears at him. With a crazed smile, he quotes a famous line, thinking it suits the moment. But the guards aren't amused and kick him, telling him to shut up. A long-haired elf appears, stating that the Sixth Squad always ranks last. He then announces their punishment, pointing to Vice Captain Hammond sobbing on the ground. Next, he presents Merit, a squad member who is completely tied up. Even the squad mascot, a cute panda, is on the punishment list. And lastly, there's Soma, the new captain who's about to be taken out before he even starts. The elf then dramatically proclaims that they are all sentenced to be eliminated. But the drama fizzles when the elf's wig falls off, revealing a shiny bald head. Soma is in shock, wondering how workplace harassment escalated this fast. The elf quickly dabs some glue on his head to fix the embarrassing situation. With a swift motion, he slaps the wig back into place, trying to act casual. He introduces himself as Griffono, bragging that he's from a pure blood elf clan. The elf then declares he will be the one to end the new captain's life right here. The scene flashes back to the blonde subordinate warning him about Griffono. Kazuya had been walking the army dogs when she gave him the heads up. She explained that Griffono wanted the director's job, and he had shown up at a critical time. Because of this, our hero became the primary target and would surely be attacked. The protagonist then asks his supporter Marie what plan she has in mind. With a confident smile, the blonde says she has two good strategies for this. The first plan is a head-on attack, but Kazuya is confused by what she means. He complains that this obsession with bragging about bloodlines sounds like something for livestock. He continues, saying that back home, only farmers care about things like that. Back in the present, an irritated guard points a gun at his head. With a smirk, the hero says he was forged by a goddess and trained by the demon lord. He endured harsh training as a military dog under the queen's direct command. A massive, demonic aura erupts behind him as he claims not even he knows his own strength. The vice captain cheers, yelling that the new captain seems strong and they're saved. Griffono's guards are completely petrified by the young man's intimidating display. With a surge of power, he begins to shatter the shackles on his wrists. He roars, asking if they really think they can take him out as he breaks free completely. With incredible speed, he lunges toward a terrified guard. The guard tries to fire, but the protagonist is far too quick for him. With an age-old move, the young man dodges a bullet that zips past his ear. He then slams into the soldier, taking him down with a single blow. After the first guard is down, the other two are frozen, unsure what to do. They stare in disbelief, unable to process what they just witnessed. Soma uses their hesitation to grab the gun from the fallen guard. In one impressive motion, he spins to his feet, ready for his next move. Using the soldier's body as a shield, he aims the gun at the other guard. Without a moment's hesitation, the new captain firmly pulls the trigger. The weapon fires with a loud bang and a bright flash that lights up the scene. The silhouette shows the first guard being hit squarely by the dead-on shot. The last guard yells at him not to move, threatening to bite if he tries anything. But Kazuya pistol whips him, knocking him out and finishing the second one. The other guards shout that the gun is loaded with blanks and poses no threat. The young man then hurls the gun like a javelin straight at Griffono. The weapon hits the ground with enough force to create a crater, taking out the third. Now only the two of them remain, facing each other silently in the dust. Griffono's hand is shaking, realizing he has severely underestimated his opponent. In a panic, the bald elf screams and fires his pistol at our hero, but the bullets seem to bounce off the air as the captain stands unharmed. The sound of gunfire echoes, but not a single shot finds its mark. Kazuya continues to dodge the bullets effortlessly, terrifying his enemy. With an icy glare, the protagonist stares down at the trembling elf on the ground. The young man then stomps on Griffono's chest, defeating him in one swift motion. Witnessing this, all the other soldiers bow, pledging their loyalty to the new captain. The two elf women who greeted him are now swooning, shouting how much they love him. Even the vice captain and the panda are celebrating, cheering that their new leader is incredible. The entire crowd raises their fists, vowing to follow Soma for the rest of their lives. With a frightening smile, the young man blushes and tells them all to shut up because they're ugly. The soldiers are baffled by his reaction, wondering if he's come down with something. Then Soma says that if they want to settle things with force, he looks down at his hands, warning that mercy is completely. With a shout, he shatters the shackles, declaring that pity is off the table. He lunges at a soldier, surprised they're actually choosing to fight. The young man grumbles about wasting energy dodging a shot that was never even fired. With a quick motion, he closes in on the guard to end the fight. but suddenly the soldier lands a powerful punch right across his face. The impact is so strong that the protagonist feels a sharp jolt of pain. Another guard smashes him in the chin with the butt of his weapon. Next, a silhouette shows the hero taking a powerful kick that sends him stumbling back. Several other soldiers kick him in sequence, launching him far away from them. The vice captain screams in despair that the new leader is weak and they're doomed. Lying on the ground, the protagonist looks up with determination and says that Plan B starts now. The guy is sent flying and slides across the floor after taking a flurry of hits. Griffono watches the scene with a serious and completely disinterested look on his face. Suddenly, the elf starts laughing hysterically, finding the whole situation hilarious. He asks if that's all the new captain's strength while the hero is down on the ground. With a quick movement, the elf draws his pistol and prepares to end the fight. The protagonist sees the bullet hole in the wall and realizes the weapon is real. With a wicked smile, Griffono points the weapon at him and says he'll give him a chance. He orders the guy to kneel and bark like a dog to have his life spared. The elf thinks that with this, his promotion to director of the tax bureau will vanish. The vice captain desperately yells for the leader to surrender, saying it's no shame to admit defeat. Lying on the ground, Kazuya says the reason he became a dog is quite simple. He became one so that no one else would have to, leaving the vice captain confused. The elves wonder why he's acting so cool in such a dangerous situation. Suddenly, the protagonist starts howling like a dog with a powerful energy. The sound of his howl echoes through the place with a dark and powerful aura surrounding him. The scene cuts to Mary's room, where she sleeps peacefully surrounded by dogs. Out of nowhere, all the dogs wake up and dash off the bed with incredible speed. Marie is left alone on the bed in a funny position after the animals' sudden escape. The dogs run through the city streets like black blurs at high speed. They leap across the rooftops of houses with impressive agility and strength. The entire pack crosses a city square, which is completely empty at the moment. With powerful leaps, they continue on their way to the execution yard. The lead dog's view shows they're getting closer and closer to their final destination. Griffono notices the guy is still lying on the ground and thinks he won't react. Suddenly, a large explosion of smoke happens right where the guards were standing. The force of the impact throws the elf and his companion backward, their hair flying. Griffono looks back in shock and wonders what just happened there. A group of imposing dogs appears, revealing themselves to be the Demon King's beloved hounds. Frightened, the elf shouts and asks how he can command the Demon King's dogs. Kazuya explains that they are co-workers and that he is treated like a military dog. With a terrifying smile, he asks what the crime is for hurting the Demon King's dog. One of the dogs lunges forward and bites a guard's neck. Immediately after, the Rottweiler attacks another soldier, biting his arm with great force. The pug leaps and lands a direct hit on Griffono's face, who is left stunned by the attack. Even the smallest of the dogs finds a weak spot and attacks one of the guards without any mercy. The largest dog then bites down on the elf's head, who is completely paralyzed with fear. Griffono screams that using the Demon King's property is a capital crime and that he signed the papers. But Kazuya tells the elf girl to take a good look at the signature he left on the document. The two girls look at the paper and are shocked when they realize it's not his real name. The guy then reveals that it was the name he planned to give his future son. Hearing this, the blonde elf starts to cry, holding the document with sadness in her eyes. She falls to the ground in despair, shouting that she lost her chance at finding true love. The other elf comforts her while Kazuya walks away, saying he's single too. Angrily, Griffono bares his teeth as he has extensive experience in surrendering. His eye twitches with hatred, as he never expected the situation to reach this point. Every cell in his face moves to form the expression he knows best. And with that, he flashes a desperate and fawning smile at the new squad captain. The elf says it was all just a joke and that it was a welcome ceremony. But Kazuya holds the weapon he took and prepares for what he's about to do next. He says the kingdom has banned ambiguous expressions, and if they're going to fight, they should fight for real. Then the guy grabs Griffono's hand and forces him to point the weapon at his own head. With a determined look, the protagonist faces his enemy without a hint of fear. The elf's finger trembles on the trigger, as he doesn't have the courage to actually do it. Griffono is completely terrified by the new squad captain's insane attitude. Then the hero shouts with all his might and tells the elf to just shoot already. The elf is shocked and thinks Kazuya should be just like him but doesn't understand why. A flashback scene shows that Griffono had a childhood full of slander from commoners. People whispered behind his back, saying the elf was completely incompetent. Because he was so spoiled, everyone believed the future of the elves was in danger with him. During a training session, he hit his butler and, to mature, joined the hero Helga's group. He thought he was the hero and offered Helga the chance to become his subordinate in the past. Back then, he believed he would take down the Demon King and marry the beautiful warrior. But the redhead tore up his letter and said she despised men who wrote romantic things. After having his heart broken, the elf fell into despair as she left him behind. So he tried to use the Demon King's power to finally win the girl over. He surrendered willingly but shouted that he didn't understand why he was being mistreated. The Demon Queen then asked what the benefit would be in accepting his surrender. Terrified, the elf tried to say the Dark Lord was invincible but was cut off. He received a severe punishment and felt his face burn with unbearable pain. The suffering continued, and the guy felt the heat spread throughout his entire body. The queen then told him not to waste any more of her time and left him on the floor. Even demoted to a dog, he attempted one last military feat to turn the tables. He knelt before the Dark Lord and promised a peaceful surrender of the castle. But he saw Kazuya and the general surrendering first and was furious at the sight. The queen pushed him aside and said he was in her way, leaving him confused. The elf got his current position by offering a vast treasure to an important person. Crying, he shouts that it's not fair for Kazuya to receive the Demon King's favor and not him. An explosion of energy surrounds him as he screams that he's being treated like trash. The flashback ends and Kazuya thinks with a smile that this is his great victory. Back to the conversation with Marie, the blonde says she has two good plans for him. Plan A would be a frontal assault, and she shows a dog's teeth to illustrate. Plan B was to simply beg for forgiveness, as they wouldn't take out one of the king's lackeys. But the guy explains that he needs to maintain a facet of strength because he's not recognized by the king. With a wicked smile, he shouts that's why he needs to act arrogant and authoritarian. In the present, Griffono releases an aura of power, his hair floating in the air. The protagonist finds it hard to breathe because of the magical power emanating from him. He realizes that the elf's subordinates are much stronger than the Demon King's dogs. They could end everything by pulling the trigger but hesitate because of his position. Then the hero shouts and asks if no one has ever told the elf a certain something before. He continues and says that with that face, the elf is ugly with or without hair either way. The elf girls are shocked because he made fun of the one thing Griffono cares about most. The vice captain and the others shout for the elf to shoot and finish the hero off. With his teeth clenched in rage, the elf says he will never forgive what he did. But he suddenly stops and looks closely, having noticed something strange about the situation. He wonders if the guy acted like a fool and showed weakness on purpose at the beginning. The elf then remembers the beating and questions if it was to make everyone believe they could take him out. Griffono starts to break into a cold sweat as he tries to understand his enemy's true strategy. He sees a gigantic shadow of the kingdom and its leaders behind the kneeling hero. With a look of terror, he thinks that Kazuya isn't human but a sharp blade. He understands that the hero is the Demon King's dog, a tool to purge corrupt officials. With a smile, the guy makes a peace sign with his hands, and the elf wonders what he's going to do. Suddenly, Griffono feels as if he's being cut into several pieces at once. Then the scene shows that his hair has actually been completely shaved off without him noticing. The vice captain shouts in shock because the hero shaved off all of Lord Griffono's hair. Kazuya says he's going to correct his vanity so he won't spend the people's money on wigs. The elf bites his lip so hard that it starts to bleed, thinking about the guy. He feels he can't take out the hero, and a fountain of blood spurts from his head. The protagonist looks at his own hands and says the sight of the scene is magnificent. With this, he thinks that now everyone believes he is the Demon King's dog. Suddenly, a sphere of black energy appears and says it has finally found what it was looking for. A crack forms in the dark sky, as if a seal is about to break. Then a gigantic and terrifying eye opens in the middle of the sky, watching everything from above. The entity says it took out the demon god and calls the protagonist an insignificant insect. But the guy simply wipes his nose and says the inauguration ceremony is finally over. The scene turns black and white, and he realizes everyone around him is frozen. The hero wonders why no one is moving and is confused by the situation. One of the dogs jumps on Griffono's back, who is completely frozen in time. All the soldiers and dogs are standing still like statues, not moving an inch. Kazuya realizes he can't move either and panics because he has an itch. The giant eye appears in the sky again and says it has found the insect that took out the goddess. The voice shouts that Kazuya will not live in peace after what he did, as we see the attack on the goddess. The entity reveals itself to be the talking book and complains that it worked overtime to clean up the mess. He continues his complaint, saying that from working so much he now has huge dark circles under his eyes. Suddenly, the clouds in the sky begin to fall over the city as if they were a flood. They gather and form a fortress identical to the one the goddess used to live in. The protagonist panics as he realizes that whole thing is coming after him. Immediately after, cloud tentacles grab him and leave hanging upside down. Lines of red energy appear out of nowhere and trap him completely in the air with no escape. But with a confident smile, the guy doesn't seem to mind the dangerous situation. The demon queen appears sitting on him and calls the book Antiphon while the hero complains about the pain. Antiphon comments that not even time-stopping works on the champion who unified the world. With her sword in hand, the queen asks why she can't feel Miles' presence. Kazuya then remembers the voice and realizes it's the noisy book from the Cloud Fortress. Antiphon replies that she is no longer the administrator and has no right to know. The protagonist is shocked, wondering if Antiphon was the Demon King's name all along. The sovereign faces the clouds and asks if they plan to attack her now as well. Then, with a smile, she says they are greatly underestimating the divine power she possesses. A bluish aura begins to emanate from her body as she prepares for combat. With a mocking look, she asks Antiphon if this is all he can do. The queen slaps the guy who is still trapped and scolds him for his weakness. In an instant, she flies towards the sky to face the threat head-on without fear. With an agile movement, the white-haired girl lands on one of the clouds in the air. The giant eye shouts furiously and tells the demon queen to receive its powerful attack. The queen repeats that the clouds shouldn't try to attack her and prepares to retaliate. She again states that the divine power they face is far superior to theirs. The energy around the girl intensifies, showing that she is being very serious. With a single swing of her sword, she cuts through the clouds and the red energy lines. Victorious, she faces the eye and taunts it, asking if that was all its power. The hero is flabbergasted by the demon queen's impressive display of power. The magic book watches the scene in silence, seemingly shocked by the outcome of the fight. The dark clouds are now surrounded by red lightning, and the queen prepares to fight. With a mighty cry, she invokes a deadly force to use in her next attack. Suddenly, golden lights begin to float through the streets of the still, paralyzed city. These lights spread throughout the capital, creating a beautiful and mysterious scene in the sky. Next, the light particles gather and form a bright, golden crown in the air. The crown then lands on the queen's head, who now exudes an even greater aura of power. She then fires a slash of golden energy towards the giant eye in the sky with force. With a confident smile, the sovereign seems to be having a lot of fun with the whole battle. The attack hits Antiphon's eye, which is surrounded by an intense red light on impact. But the book says she is foolish, as its true body is not there to be hit. Meanwhile, Kazuya watches everything from a distance and realizes something else is about to happen. The clouds surround him again, and he desperately screams that this is home invasion. Desperate, the guy asks the clouds to stop invading all of his orifices. With a panicked face, he shouts for the demon queen, asking for help in that situation. Soon after, he changes his mind and yells that this whole thing is actually a major robbery. The queen faces the enemy and asks if he is truly determined to take her out there. With a powerful spin, the girl creates a vortex of red and black energy around her. Then the sovereign dives at high speed, surrounded by lightning and destructive power. The impact of her attack causes a gigantic explosion that destroys everything on the ground. Lying in the rubble, the white-haired girl appears calm and unharmed after the destruction. Kazuya thanks the queen for protecting his chastity in a very strange way. The girl then looks at the sky and sees a cloud formation that looks like a volcano. With a serious look, the sovereign invokes the force of Gaia for their next confrontation. A dark gate with skulls appears, and she shouts for the gate of Hades to open. Skeletal hands begin to push the large gate from the inside to open it slowly. A giant skull with glowing blue eyes peeks through the crack of the opening gate. She then summons the Skull Seraph, a multi-headed skeletal monster. The creature releases an aura of blue power and prepares to attack the great enemy. Seeing all this, Kazuya throws himself on the ground and thinks the best thing to do is play dead. The queen observes her summon with a determined look, ready for the great battle. The skeleton's hands lunge forcefully towards the clouds in the sky. The giant eye watches the scene calmly and says it has finally understood the situation. Antiphon praises the queen for unifying the world and possessing the mortal and Gaia forces. He comments that Amal misjudged her power, which is why Helga was brutally defeated. The sovereign says that when Antiphon realized a hero wouldn't stop him, he made a decision. She asks if he abandoned the cloud fortress and fled the dimension after being humiliated. Then the queen says he gave the selfish order to take out the insect that surrendered to her. But the talking book replies that the girl is wrong and that she and Amal are two idiots. Antiphon shouts that she doesn't suspect Amal was taken out by Soma and has no right to know. With a determined look, the demon queen orders the skeleton to become her servant once more. The Skull Seraph rises amidst the rubble and prepares for battle. The creature then runs at high speed towards the clouds to attack the enemy. The skeleton lands a powerful punch on the giant eye, which screams in pain from the impact. The blow is so strong that space itself around them begins to shatter and crack. Antiphon reveals that he has dragged them into the cloud fortress, and the Seraph stops attacking. The queen is surrounded by blue energy and seems to be restrained by some power. But with a wicked smile, the white-haired girl shouts that it's finally happening. Antiphon says the cloud fortress is where the gods live, and she will never possess it. Suddenly, the clouds begin to dissolve into thousands of dark particles in the air. The large floating castle also begins to slowly disintegrate before everyone's eyes. The queen watches the scene with a serious expression as her surroundings disappear. She then concludes that she cannot become a god unless she does it the hard way. Antiphon says he is waiting for her, and Kazuya feels a strange tightness in his body. The dimensional barrier trapping the giant eye begins to break more and more. The Skull Seraph then asks its master to step aside and let it fight. The time stop is deactivated, and Kazuya realizes he can finally move. Back in the courtyard, Griffono screams for the dogs not to bite him, and the hero is confused. The elf is shocked by the scene and can't believe what is happening. Suddenly, something hits his face hard, and he feels a great impact. In an instant, the elf is finished off in a very brutal and definitive way. The protagonist sits on the ground, shocked by the destruction in the bodies around him. Meanwhile, the elf's other subordinates are also defeated in a brutal manner. A dark figure stares at with a serious and intense gaze. The demon queen then realizes that all the damage was caused when time was stopped. The guy breaks into a cold sweat and wonders how he's going to explain all that destruction. But the queen says any excuse will do, like a natural disaster or a big brawl. He is a little confused by His Majesty's simple and carefree answer. Then he understands that the best option is to simply improvise a good excuse. The scene cuts to nighttime in an unknown place with a crescent moon in the sky. There, a cute creature vomits a strange blue liquid onto a large glass window. Two other creatures watch the scene with curiosity as the liquid runs down. Back in the present, Kazuya hears the queen's order and panics to obey. With a bark, he hurries to complete the task he received from his majesty. The sovereign then praises him, saying he is a good dog for his obedience. She then tells him to go take care of the cleaning at the house of a blonde subordinate named Marie. The scene then cuts to a place where a man named Astit is playing Jenga with a building. It is explained that in his domain, everything is subject to his will and power of distortion. One of the maids uses a magnifying glass and finds Soma's location on one of the blocks. With her finger, she points to the exact block where our protagonist is at the moment. Astit then orders the maid Kiko to mark the target for the next step of the plan. They then send furballs into the room through the ventilation ducts. The small creatures float through the ducts toward their final destination. The furballs come out of the ventilation grate and spread throughout the room. Elsewhere, the guy meets a blonde man and says he wanted to meet him like a normal person. One of the furballs lands on his shoulder, and the result is great suspicion. The other maid, Palm, receives the order to slice the building without harming the king's secretary. With a knife in hand, the maid prepares to cut the tower of blocks with precision. The real building is then sliced into several pieces, just like the toy. The protagonist says that on that day, something unexpected happened to him and the man. Then Astit hits the tower of blocks with a golf club and completely destroys it. The protagonist stares at the blonde man in shock as the building breaks into several pieces around them. The moment the building explodes, the blonde man is thrown far away along with the room. He then desperately tries to hold on to something using all his brute strength. The guy manages to grab a metal beam to try to prevent his imminent fall. But the attempt fails, and he is launched into the night sky as a new victim of the attack. His severed hand flies in front of the moon as he shouts that Marie is a liar. Outside the building, Melito and a panda watch the whole scene with binoculars. The girl says she can hear the captain's voice coming from the moon while the panda eats. The other man comments that the leader seems energetic and suggests they go see his landing. So Melito mounts the panda and rushes to save her captain while the other follows her. Elsewhere, Astit says the plan worked and Kazuya flew to the castle quarry. One of his maids then hands him a phone as he is receiving a call. On the other end of the line, Marie furiously screams that this is all the Mushroom Head's fault. She accuses him of trying to get rid of the 6th squad captain appointed by the Demon King. The blonde says that if anything happens to Soma, she will roast him along with the other mushrooms. With a wicked smile, Astit thinks that this part of the story is different from the script. Back to the fall, Kazuya asks the other man what he meant by that. The scene then rewinds a bit and shows the piece of the building flying through the night sky. The man explains that during the castle's renovation, he had to act in a certain way. He simply threw away someone who entered the construction zone without permission. The guy screams in despair as he falls from the sky along with the chair he was in. Immediately after, the two men fall at high speed from an impressive height. Kazuya then reaches out his hand and shouts that he will save him from the approaching deadly fall. With a quick move, he manages to grab the other man in the middle of the freefall. The guy who was saved then shouts with a smile that it was a great catch by the blondie. Kazuya thinks that now he just needs to grab onto the building to save themselves. But he looks at his other arm and realizes with a shock that his hand is no longer there. The two continue to fall towards the ground with little chance of survival. The man who was saved then starts to cry and shouts that the protagonist is also a liar. Suddenly, they are caught by white structures that look like giant ribs. The saved man then faces the situation with a serious and determined look. The two men are trapped in a strange structure and wonder what is happening. The guy who was saved looks to the side with an expression of surprise and confusion. He sees a small furball on his face that says it can't finish him off yet. Kazuya says he's safe now, but the other one shouts for him not to take the credit. The scene cuts to a boy who sees the piece of the building flying from the castle to the quarry. The object was about to crash to the ground with a huge impact from a height of 200 meters. But he was saved by a white, fluffy substance that cushioned his entire fall. Back on the call, Marie asks Astit what he is planning this time. She questions him because she thought he was supposed to get rid of Soma to enter Kingforge. With a mocking smile, Astit then asks who Soma is, as he doesn't know him. He continues and asks if she is referring to the human he accidentally threw away. Astit says that if Soma survives the fall, it was all just a small construction accident. Suddenly, a powerful lightning bolt cuts through the dark sky and illuminates the entire quarry. A heavy rain begins to fall on the piece of the building that is stuck in the ground. The saved guy gets soaked by the rain and seems a little dazed by the situation. Then Kazuya lands in a heroic pose amidst the storm that is forming there. The blonde man turns to the man on the ground and casually asks how he's feeling. With a thumbs up, he replies that he's fine and thanks him, asking how the hero is doing. Kazuya thinks there's something wrong with his brain and puts him on his back. Astit says that even if he finds an assassin's guild, it won't be a problem. He continues, saying that it would have absolutely nothing to do with him anyway. Kazuya faces the situation with a serious and determined look amidst the heavy rain. Suddenly, several pairs of boots appear walking towards them in the rain. A sea of black umbrellas forms, revealing that they are completely surrounded. The guy realizes the enemy didn't want to finish them in the fall and prepared a reception. One of the men with an eye patch shouts furiously, calling them monsters for everything they did. He remembers his comrades who were sacrificed just to lure them there. Kazuya says he'll start the combat carrying him and asks him to pass him a pipe. With the object in hand, the guy says he will be the hero's left hand in that battle. The two then prepare to face the crowd of enemies awaiting them. With a strange energy in his hand, the blonde man charges into combat at high speed. Alone, he faces the immense crowd of enemies waiting for him in the rainy quarry. With a powerful kick, the hero begins to clear a path through the adversaries. He then lands a direct hit on a group of men, but one of them manages to block his blow. In the midst of the confusion, the protagonist's companion is knocked to the ground by the enemies. The blonde man is surrounded by the men in suits but continues to fight with everything he has. One of the henchmen jumps to finish off the fallen guy, shouting that his head is his. But Kazuya intercepts him and finishes the enemy in a brutal way, praising his aim. Another man then tries to attack the hero from behind, shouting that his guard is down. Quickly, the protagonist uses the enemy's own hand to take him out in the process. Down on the ground, the man tells him not to be afraid and to advance, while he just wants to go home. The eye patch leader furiously shouts that desertion in the face of the enemy is a capital crime. With the boss's order, the entire crowd advances towards the two for the attack. The blonde man's companion then thinks this is the perfect chance since they're all together. With a powerful leap, he throws himself over the heads of all the enemies there. From up there, he uses his hook to hit several targets at once with precision. The guy continues his aerial attack and hits one of the men in suits on the ground. With a wicked smile, he reveals he has several hooks to use in the battle. The enemies scream that they can't move because they are too crowded in one place. The leader gets annoyed because insulting his strategy is also a capital crime for everyone. The left hand returns to Kazuya's shoulders, who praises his partner's good work. The two prepare again to continue the fight against the army of men in suits. With a powerful spin, the hero throws several enemies away at once. But in a moment of carelessness, his companion is hit and falls from his back to the ground. Suddenly, the protagonist is surprised by an attack of thorns that appears out of nowhere. He is trapped by thorny vines while an enemy holds him with a knife to his neck. Immediately after, chains appear and completely bind our hero's body. The blonde man is completely immobilized with no chance of escaping the trap. The enemy explains that with that demonic sword, he won't move until they let him go. The leader reveals he knows Kazuya is from the royal guard and that he is a valuable prize. Suddenly, the man with the eye patch screams in pain with a shocked expression on his face. Kazuya's companion then advances with a determined smile for the next attack. The henchmen pull the chains with force and shout for help to contain the prisoner. In the midst of the storm, the guy fights alone against several enemies at the same time. But he is knocked down, and one of the men steps on his head with force as he screams. The attack continues, and the guy screams again for the enemy to let him go. With a bruised face, he curses the henchman who continues to press him to the ground. The scene then cuts to a movie theater, where two versions of him are watching everything on a screen. One of them asks why they always get beaten up so much, and if they're trying to win an award. The other version gets angry and shouts that he's a loser for forgetting the vow they made. On the screen, a younger version swears he will reign and become the new Demon King. A version dressed as a schoolgirl complains that their plot is completely stalled. In the real world, the guy covers his ears and shouts that what they're asking is impossible. The versions continue to complain that there's no time to develop characters or the world. Back in reality, he grabs his head and shouts that it's impossible to achieve that. A cowboy version says they are acting like idiots and that he has a better idea. He suggests they stop biting the enemy as it's suicide and will only make things worse. Then all the versions start shouting and arguing about what the best plan would be. The main version says the situation is impossible and challenges anyone with a better idea. And in his words, the entire theater falls into a complete and awkward silence in the dark. The main version then stares at the screen with a serious and determined look. Back in the fight, the guy gets up and says he never stopped resisting, even when injured. He then shouts and asks if there is anyone there who can fulfill the promise he made. One of the versions replies that if any of them could do it, they would already be doing it now. Another version then calmly says that if he passes on, he can just come back to life later. The guy thinks that he has finally regained his human rights after so much suffering. He then reflects that with the improvement in his life, he deserves to relax a bit more. The main version yells at him, reminding him that he swore to become the Demon King. He continues and asks if failing in his dream means he has to be done for now. With a final cry of frustration, he seems to release all his pent-up anger. One version of the guy sits on the floor and says he's already checked out of the situation. On the screen, the man with the eye patch raises a giant hammer to attack. He then brings the hammer down with all his might towards the enemy on the ground. The leader then furiously shouts that he told them not to take him out and calls him an idiot. The man with the hammer asks if they thought he wouldn't take out their target. On the screen, the versions of the guy scream in panic and wonder what they will do. The guy's face is covered in blood as he writhes in pain on the ground. With a dark smile, he prepares for the next attack with all his strength. The leader screams in panic, and the hammer hits the guy's head with force. Kazuya then glows with a red aura, showing all his fury. The henchman holding him shouts that he won't let anyone treat him like a fool. Kazuya enters his rampage mode and prepares to exterminate the enemies. Red lightning shoots from the blonde man's body, attacking all surrounding enemies. One of the men is hit directly and suffers a great impact to his body. The guy then kneels with his eyes glowing as the lightning spreads. With a single blow, the blonde man hits all the enemies at once with his power. A powerful explosion occurs, leaving the ground with lava-filled cracks. The protagonist kneels in the center of the explosion with a determined look. The eye patch leader is shocked and cannot believe what he has just seen. All the enemies are down on the ground after the blonde man's powerful attack. The leader gets angry and shouts that the goal was to capture him, calling him a madman. Kazuya, with a bleeding head, says the reason for all of this was to win. The leader's eyes are pierced by lightning, and he screams in pain from the attack. Kazuya throws the severed finger into the air and says his mission is to ensure safety. Marie then shouts over the phone and asks how far he threw Soma. She questions him and asks him to answer if he claims to be innocent of everything. With a wicked smile, Astate wonders if it was to the southeast and asks for time to remember. He laughs and says his memory has been terrible lately, and it will take a while to recall. Marie stares at the ruined building and shouts for the enemy to forget what he said. Red lightning cuts through the sky, revealing the completely devastated city. Marie then orders them to bring Soma back alive, and an orange-haired man agrees. But he questions if the situation isn't already under control with F1 on site. Back at the quarry, Kazuya's partner realizes the situation has suddenly gotten very ugly. Atop the rocks, a group congratulates their students for forcing the enemy's trump card. An old man introduces himself as Aim Grim and says his name carries weight in the world of education. He then accuses the two of having ended the lives of many of his students there. In a flashback, he explains that the children were orphans who lost their parents in the war. Grim says he took them in to be the hope of humanity, but the other guy disagrees. Crying, he laments that their lives were taken too soon, like his student Helga's. The hero's partner interrupts him and tells him to wait a moment before continuing. He shouts that even if the story doesn't make sense, he should stick to his principles. The blonde man's partner explains that Helga challenged the demon king of her own free will, and as a result of that intense battle, the warrior ended up being defeated in the end. Grim then states that her passing was honorable, and that it happened when it was meant to. The guy questions the tragic past and the hard work the old man put in with his students. Then he shouts and asks what all of that has to do with him being their target. Furious, he accuses Grim of allying with the Demon King's lackeys just to set him up. With a mocking smile, the guy says the old man has a lot of nerve to lecture him. He continues and asks if the old man is senile, while Kazuya just watches him. The verbal assault is so strong that the educator starts to bleed from his nose out of pure rage. With that, a scoreboard appears, showing that the hero's partner scored a point in the argument. One of Grim's students runs towards him and shouts, asking the master to teach him. Kazuya comments on his courage, but the guy says he's not afraid because he's fought more. However, he then admits that he probably can't defeat those enemies. The protagonist is shocked by the revelation and wonders if he provoked him too much earlier. The partner explains that F1 is strong enough to shoot lasers and that it's a rare power. Meanwhile, Grim begins to explain the power system using a cow puppet. He continues the explanation and says that at level 20, one becomes as agile as a monkey. Levels 30 and 40 don't stand out, but at 50, the power explodes all at once. And if someone reaches level 100, that person wouldn't fall behind even the Demon King. The hero's partner asks what the old man is doing, and Kazuya responds with the truth. They both find the explanation with puppets unnecessary and too childish for the situation. Grim shouts that he is a famous educator and that the level-based method makes it easier to understand. But the hero's partner complains that his explanation has no cool factor. He continues the lecture, saying that presentation is important and questions the terms used. The old man then concludes that for the power system, clarity is the most important thing. With this final argument, the two guys seem to have been completely convinced. And with that, the argument score is tied, and the dispute becomes even more intense between them. The educator asks the hero's partner if his power has reached level 50 yet. It is revealed that the laser from before was a one-time used trump card installed through surgery. The protagonist's partner furiously shouts and asks the old man what he really knows. The blonde man confirms it, and the partner yells that he was too honest with his answer. Grim then reveals that the fallen men were just bait for their final move. He continues the explanation, saying that the real enemies are his 7 honor students. Atop the rocks, 3 students watch the scene calmly amidst the rain. The other 4 appear, and Grim says their skills are approaching level 50. Kazuya is then placed in a basket and shouts at his partner, asking what he is doing. The blonde man pulls the rope with all his might to try to get the guy to a safe place. The mechanism's pulley starts to spark due to the tension on the structure. With that, the guy is hoisted up the side of the cliff at an impressive speed. One of the masked students jumps and shouts for him to get out of the basket immediately. The man with glasses ignores the warning and continues to pull the rope with great determination. But suddenly the pulley breaks and the entire mechanism is destroyed in the process. Seeing the scene, the old educator calls the hero's partner a very cunning fox. The basket and the debris from the mechanism fall down the cliff amidst the heavy storm. The blonde man explains that without reaching level 50, no one can fly through the skies. He then reveals to the protagonist that his true mission is to protect him there at the quarry. The masked student asks if the plan is to defeat the army and then finish off Soma. Grimm praises his level 49 student's great adaptability for the question. Confidently, the masked man says the mission will be a piece of cake and prepares for combat. But in an instant, he is hit by a brutal surprise attack from behind. The hero's partner then appears holding a shotgun that is still smoking. The masked student falls to the ground defeated, and Grimm introduces the rest of his students. Sitting on the blonde man, the guy says that a wrench he picked up from the ground is enough. A memory shows Grimm telling him to keep a weapon hidden as a surprise. The blonde man then faces the old man and says with a smile that he also has a surprise for him. Meanwhile, Kazuya screams desperately on the edge of the cliff that he's afraid of heights. The fighter student leaps into combat and tells everyone to stay behind him for safety. Next, the protagonist's partner fires his weapon with all his might in his direction. The bullets ricochet off the fighter's body, and Grimm says he repels weapons and swords. With a glint in his glasses, the blonde man advances and the two exchange blows at high speed. The masked fighter shows his great resistance by punching a rock wall without any problem. But Grimm explains that despite his defense, his student's attack power is quite average. With that, the student excuses himself and walks slowly towards the man with glasses. In a swift move, the hero's partner shoves the shotgun into his enemy's mouth. With a mocking look, he then asks if the inside of his body is also hard. Suddenly, a holy sword flies at high speed towards the two in combat. The blade hits the fighter, and Grimm shouts that number 5 has wounded the enemy for the first time. The old man then praises the blonde student, saying he is a genius recognized by the sword. The man with glasses then says, if the student is superior to the sword, that means something. He then lifts the fighter and says the weapon can't hurt him there at all. The student desperately screams for his sword, while the fighter complains of a headache. Then the blonde man is thrown far away and shouts that he no longer believes in human beings. With victory secured, the hero's partner gives a satisfied smile at the scene. He then faces his next opponent, who awaits him from a distance in the heavy rain. The enemy with dynamite strapped to his body says he doesn't recommend smoking without a special constitution. Immediately after, he uses his cigarette to light the fuse of the explosive on his body. The student explodes, and Grimm says that number 1 has powerful regeneration abilities. The man with glasses just stares at the scene with a serious and completely bored look. A gigantic explosion devastates the battlefield with overwhelming and intimidating force. The old man explains that approaching level 50 means entering the realm of monsters. Desperate, Hammond shouts the name of the man with sunglasses who disappeared in the fight. He then wonders why reinforcements haven't arrived yet to help in the confrontation. Melito then replies to her companion that it's because they are too weak to fight. The scene shows the reinforcements being tossed from side to side in the heavy rain. One of the new enemies, a muscular boxer, finishes his opponent with a single punch. Another female enemy in a gymnast outfit also defeats her target with a very powerful kick. The trio in sunglasses then introduces themselves as the Forbidden Army F4 and that they have no enemies. The girl complains that they are weak and wonders if F1 was hired through nepotism. Melito runs desperately while the female enemy watches her from above with a cold, cruel gaze. With red eyes, the opponent complains about the abominable exam-based education. The girl tries to escape by flirting, but her opponent says she is also a woman and ignores her. The enemy complains that the top 10 should be at the same level, but she is cleaning up the mess. She continues, saying that everyone else had a chance to take out Soma and get his crown. Melito tells her to give up and go after the captain, but the enemy gets angry at the suggestion. With a powerful kick, the enemy attacks Melito, who is on the ground with no defense. But Hammond gets in front of the blow to protect her, and the girl screams his name desperately. With the impact of the blow, he thinks that it seems he keeps making the wrong choices. From afar, two men see the block on the moon and say they are going to see the captain's landing. The blue-haired girl gets on the panda and says she will help him, but the other follows right behind. Hammond then joins them, and the three run at high speed with the large panda. A map then shows that their route will take them from the stone wall to the quarry. Arriving at the quarry, they see the blonde man defeating several enemies with powerful lightning. In the distance, they also observe the red lasers that light up the sky with the battle. Hammond then lights a cigarette and excuses himself, preparing for what comes next. The map shows a change of route, indicating they're going from the quarry to the forest. In the forest, he bows to the trio and says he is just a passerby asking for forgiveness. The trio then recognizes him as an ally and asks where Captain Soma landed. Melito then tells Hammond that if one member is strong, if the four of them team up, they can win. Running through the forest, Hammond thinks he shouldn't have believed the girl's words. Suddenly, the group is watched by a giant figure that appears on top of the trees. At that moment, members of the Forbidden Army jump from the trees for a surprise ambush. A giant boot descends from the sky, and the pair panics at the unexpected attack. Seeing the scene, the trio's leader shouts for everyone to prepare their defensive weapons immediately. On a cliff, the protagonist starts a 5-second countdown for his plan. The moment the count reaches 1, a large fiery explosion occurs at the location. Hammond is in shock from the explosion and wonders who is responsible for the attack. Meanwhile, the protagonist looks for Melito so the two can escape together. But a white blur passes by him at high speed, and the guy screams out of pure fright. With an expression of complete despair, he lets out a scream with all his might. With that, the orange-haired enemy falls defeated to the ground, and their counter-attack fails. The opponent then faces Hammond with a cold gaze and prepares for the next confrontation. She questions if he is going to fight, but the man says no and asks her for help. Angrily, the enemy tells him to be quiet and calls him trash for not fighting her. Hiding, Melito thinks she's not that close to the captain and tries to escape the fight. She complains that she's just cleaning up the mess because she's 10th in the power ranking. The girl continues to complain that everyone had a chance to take the great hero's crown. The enemy attacks and defeats Melito while Hammond watches everything from behind a rock. A flashback scene shows the guy taking care of a little girl in a park. His gaze changes and becomes very serious as he prepares for what he's about to do. With a flower in his hair and a look of pure determination, he prepares for battle. He then runs and throws himself in front of Melito to protect her from the enemy's attack. With a powerful kick, the girl hits him squarely in the face with all her strength. The impact of the blow is very strong and blood splatters all over the scene. Melito is shocked by the scene and thinks that she keeps making the wrong choices. Lying on the ground, the vice captain seems to be very injured after receiving the attack. The enemy then backs away and runs off after finishing her opponent. With his last strength, Hammond tells the blue-haired girl to run as fast as possible. But she refuses to flee and shouts that she was the one who brought him there, so she's not leaving. In a flashback, the girl asks why the vice captain treats her so well and he smiles. With a piece of steak in her mouth, she thinks that he's not a creep after all and feels relieved. He then boasts and says his ex-wife was a world-class beauty to her. Back in the present, the enemy shouts for him not to act cool and calls him trash. She insults him, saying he's not worth it and will never have a bounty on his head. With her eyes closed, the blue-haired girl then calls out the name of her great panda. With a look of pure fury, she gives her companion the order to simply take them out. Suddenly, a giant panda with a glowing red eye appears behind the opponent. The enemy is shocked and wonders if the panda was always that big. But even surprised, she doesn't back down and prepares her legs for the next attack. The panda blocks her kick, and she shouts that he will regret not finishing her. With a quick movement, the large animal manages to stop her blow without difficulty. The opponent is completely confused by the panda's strength and doesn't understand the scene. The bear then grabs the girl's 2 legs and holds her upside down in the air. Immediately after, he begins to slam the enemy on the ground with great force and without mercy. Melito then shakes her friend and asks if he feels better seeing her revenge. The opponent then falls to the ground completely defeated and covered in blood in the rain. With a weapon in her hand, the girl asks if the enemy has any last words to say. But the opponent stares her down and challenges her to shoot if she has the courage to do it. A gunshot then echoes through the dark forest under the light of a large full moon. The scene then cuts to the old man and a red-haired girl watching a large explosion. A close-up on the girl's ear reveals that she has animal ears and is not human. With her keen hearing, she notices the sound of the shot and asks the old man what it was. He says that number 8 found an enemy and that they must finish things quickly. The old man then calls for numbers 3 and 7 to ignore the army and get Soma. Number 3 is a masked young man who is very quiet and uses speed as his weapon. Number 7 is the girl with beast ears, and her weapons are beauty and strength. Their plan is to use number 3's speed to cross the battlefield. Back at the explosion, the protagonist is seen amidst the fire, and someone is shocked by the scene. Number 1 is now a baby and complains that his body's restoration takes too long. A trail of blue energy flies towards the explosion as someone shouts to wait. The beast-eared girl says to change the plan and buy time for number 1 to recover. With that, the blue trail makes a curve in the air and moves away from the large fiery explosion. The man with glasses scans the object at high speed as it approaches them rapidly. Then his robotic eye locks onto the target with surgical and impressive precision. He realizes the target is his friend Soma and wonders what is happening there. With his eye glowing intensely, he furiously shouts that he will not allow that attack. An energy barrier surrounds the 2 enemies, and the pink-haired girl is startled by the scene. The guy then declares his feelings for her, saying he's not afraid of rejection because they are going to perish. Shocked, the beast-eared girl stares at him and asks if he could talk all along. Suddenly, a giant fist descends from the sky towards our protagonist on the ground. The blow causes a gigantic impact and a cry of fright echoes through the battle site. It is revealed that number 6 can enlarge parts of his body to attack enemies. The other enemies are introduced with their levels and special fighting abilities. Amidst the fire, Soma's silhouette appears with one of his arms missing. Baby number 1 thanks them for saving his life and for being level 49. The blue trail returns, and the hero says he is now counting on his friend's help. The old man says that number 8 is the strongest and doesn't need any kind of help. Back in the forest, number 8 stops the bullet from the weapon with just 2 of her fingers. Melito is shocked and shouts, wondering how she managed to catch the bullet with her fingers. Number 8 compliments her opponent and says it was a close call that she wasn't hit by the shot. As an apology, she says she will let one of them go and spare the life of just one. She then points to Melito and asks with a smile if she will be the chosen one to live. Soon after, she points to the old man who is rolling on the ground and offers him as an option. With a smile, she says she won't finish off the cute little panda who is peacefully eating bamboo. It is revealed that number 8 has no special abilities like the others in the group, but she is level 50 and tells them to choose who will survive the confrontation. The old man then shouts furiously and wonders if they are saying he got in number 8's way. In a flashback, the other members complain that the ranking is a sham and that they are leaving. The argument continues with accusations of cheating and nepotism among the group members. The old man reveals that number 8 is actually a sick child with no future. Everyone is shocked by the revelation and shouts, wondering if she has a terminal illness. He explains that she was the first to reach level 50 but didn't awaken any powers. The old man then tells them not to worry because one day they will surpass her in power. Suddenly, an explosion happens on the rock wall and everyone is startled by the impact. Baby number 1 is stuck in the wall and asks them if they are going to fight or not already. The redhead then wonders if the professor used the child as a disposable pawn in the plan. Stuck in the rock, the baby furiously shouts for them not to ignore him and to pay attention. With a wicked smile, the old man says that this was a mission they chose for themselves. The scene cuts to the full moon in the sky, and the narration continues about number 8. The girl hugs the panda and says that if her master passes away, she will take care of it forever. Melito points the weapon at the panda and can't believe it also switched sides in the fight. With her finger on the trigger, the blue-haired girl prepares to shoot the large animal. She feels that if she pulls the trigger, something terrible will happen to her at that moment. In a vision of the future, she sees herself being hit by a shot and is completely paralyzed. The scene reveals that number 8 managed to stop the bullet again using only her fingers. Seeing the scene, the blue-haired girl bows and apologizes for shooting at her. The enemy who is defeated by the panda starts laughing hysterically, finding it all funny. She mocks the girl for risking her life for her comrades and now being so pathetic. Lying on the ground, the vice captain shouts for her not to let herself be provoked and to focus on surviving. He then suggests that she ask if she can escape instead of the panda to save herself. But the girl smiles and says he is about to waste his chance to live with that. Hearing her response, the vice captain is completely shocked and doesn't understand anything. Suddenly, the panda bites number 8's arm with great force, surprising her with the attack. The purple-haired girl stares at the animal on her arm with a serious and unresponsive look. The panda then makes a super cute face with sparkling eyes to try to soften up the enemy. She shouts that she can't take it out because cuteness is the ultimate defense against any attack. Melito then whispers the word gigantification and prepares to use her hidden power. Immediately after, a giant version of her weapon appears beside her with a red aura. Seeing the scene, the vice captain is shocked and asks what she meant by benefit. With a shocked face, number 8 shouts and realizes her opponent is a powerful shaman. A scatter view then focuses on the purple-haired girl who is in the center of the location. Suddenly, a hand in a white glove starts to spin a revolver with great skill. With the weapon in hand, the mysterious person prepares to make their next move. The weapon is then pointed at the head of the enemy who is defeated by the panda in the fight. Melito faces number 8 and says that now it's her turn to make a big choice. With a look of pure panic, the purple-haired girl wonders what she is going to do now. The scene then cuts to a flashback showing her eyes when she was much younger. She says she became an assassin at age 6 and her master said she was a genius. But at night, she saw the ghosts of all the targets whose lives she had taken. She thought they were weak in life but became terrifying after they passed on. Her master then taught her that the world is about the survival of the fittest and nothing more. He explained that the weak become food for the strong, and that is the law of nature. The little girl forced herself to believe so she wouldn't see the ghosts in the dark anymore. Back in the present, number 8 punches the giant bullet with all her strength and power. The scene reveals that Melito actually shot the other enemy who was down on the ground. The opponent screams in pain from the impact of the shot that hits her directly with no defense. Meanwhile, the purple-haired girl continues to fight and deflects the giant bullet away. With her arms crossed, the woman faces the scene with a confident and determined look. The enemy who was shot thinks that number 8 probably values friendship. She continues and says that the opponent also seems to greatly value justice and what is right, and that she loves life and is a good person who simply got lost on the right path. With a smile, Melito thinks the enemy will risk herself to save her allies. But suddenly, the blue-haired girl panics because the enemy dodged the bullet. Number 8 didn't actually dodge, but rather deflected the projectile with a powerful punch. The giant bullet then shatters into several pieces from the force of the blow it received. It is revealed that the purple-haired girl didn't care and let the shot hit her ally. Melito thinks that if it were her, she would have saved everyone, but the enemy threw it all away. With a look of confusion, the blue-haired girl wonders why she did that. She then shouts at her opponent and says she could have saved her companion. The purple-haired girl says the other one was weaker, and that's why there was nothing to be done. Angrily, Melito shouts and questions why she then blocked the first attack she received. The enemy remains silent with a strange cross-shaped scar on her face. In a memory, her friends celebrate her birthday, but she doesn't even know what that is. She then tells the blue-haired girl that next year she will treat her to a meal. With a smile on her face, the purple-haired woman seems to be enjoying the situation. But suddenly, tears start to stream down her face even as she continues to smile. Annoyed, she shouts that this is all very boring and then punches a rock wall with force. She freaks out and says that if she had saved the other one, her values would shatter and the ghosts would return. Seeing the scene, Melito covers her mouth and thinks her opponent has gone completely crazy. The woman shouts that number 10 deserved what she got and that her friends didn't need to perish. She points and accuses Melito of tormenting her with magical attacks and cursing her brain. Crying, the blue-haired girl apologizes to the old man for wasting the chance he gave her. Suddenly, a mysterious hand forcefully grabs the collar of her clothes from behind without her seeing. The girl is thrown to the ground violently while Hammond watches the scene from afar, shocked. But to everyone's surprise, the large panda catches her in its arms and saves her from the fall. The animal then shouts for the vice captain to run as fast as possible and never look back. With a wicked smile, the enemy shouts for everyone to perish together and prepares to attack. Suddenly, the Forbidden Army appears and intercepts the purple-haired woman's attack. One of the trio members says that to face a level 50 powerhouse like that, he needs to use the light that is sealed within his body to have any chance of winning. Otherwise, he won't be able to defeat such a powerful enemy in a fair battle like this. Elsewhere, a strong man who fought alone against 3 members looked at the night sky. Lying on the ground, the boxer says the moon after the rain is very beautiful and admires the scenery. The sky finally clears and the full moon shines brightly after the great storm. The vice captain notices a strange writing carved on a nearby stone pillar. He wonders what it means and feels that the message was addressed to him. The message introduces itself as Raffle and says it is the veteran of the veteran in a way. The writing continues and reveals that 250 years have passed since his demise. Shocked, the guy starts to break into a cold sweat and wonders if a ghost wrote that message. The title of The Strongest Hero then appears on the screen for the audience. The guy worries about an assassin and a ghost on the cliff, but the message says it's not a ghost and that it has foresight. Angrily, he complains about how showy the ghost was when it was alive. Then he sees a statue and thinks the hero's story is a lie. His feet leave a blue energy footprint on the stone ground. A giant full moon illuminates the night sky and the rocky scenery. He then walks along a path of glowing writings on the ground. The prophecy says that as a veteran, he warns that the guy is going to perish. But the young man laughs and says he's been hearing that since chapter 13. He sees the chaos with gunshots and impacts coming from the distant forest. Suddenly, he thinks that a way to survive might be written there. Desperate, he throws himself to the ground to try to read the rest of the message. But on the ground, he only finds a large number 5 glowing. He wonders if it's a code for survival rote. Soon after, the number 4 appears and he remains confused. When the 3 appears, he starts to break into a cold sweat and gets worried. With the number 2, he panics as he realizes it's a countdown. The number 1 then glows brightly on the ground, finishing the count. He shouts that this is much more than a simple prophecy from the ghost. Then he wonders what he would think if he only had 5 seconds to live. He questions if his life would have any regrets in the end. With a serious look, he seems to think about all his choices, but he shouts that he has many regrets and doesn't believe in superstitions. He thinks they came to avenge the goddess and that her faction is weak. With an insane face, he shouts that he doesn't care about the prophecy. Suddenly, his hand hits something and he notices a strange object. With his hand, he feels the surface of a box hidden in the ground. A new message says that rebellion is the path to survival. He then stares at the box, which has a piece of advice and a skull drawn on it. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the full moon shone brightly in the starry night sky. The man with sunglasses then walks surrounded by flames with his hair on fire. He questions why his opponent is still fighting since he is just a hired assassin. The blonde man remembers that the kingdom's elite could arrive at any moment to reinforce them. His reflection in the water then shows a terrifying shadow with glowing red eyes. Old Man Grimm comments that the member of the Forbidden Army has suddenly become quite talkative. But he says that if what the blonde man said is true, then he is completely wrong. Then the old man starts shouting, calling for the royal elite to arrest the great villains there. He continues the show and asks what's taking them so long to finally arrest them for good. The surrounding landscape continues to burn amidst the great battle that is still happening. The man with glasses stares at the scene with his semi-robotic face and a very serious look. With a smile, the old man asks his enemy if he still hasn't understood the situation. He reveals it's a secret that Soma is just a pawn and that no one besides Marie cares. Surrounded by flames, the blonde man clenches his fist and shouts that they are there to protect him. The old man then says with a smile that he will ask him the same thing one more time. He questions where the so-called elite that the man with glasses mentioned before the confrontation is. With his hair on fire, the blonde man says they will arrive any second for the fight. Suddenly, he notices something strange in the air and is surprised by what is happening. A beam of annihilation rises to the heavens, and someone wonders if Ali found an enemy. Two female students then bind him with metal chains, completely immobilizing him. The masked student then tells the man with glasses that he finally let his guard down. The masked fighter advances and says that even though his power is only average in a fight, when he metallizes, he becomes as heavy as real metal and traps him with his great weight. The red-haired girl then shouts for numbers 5 and 6 to hurry up with their combined attack. Number 6 summons a giant hand of blue energy and prepares for the final blow. Number 5 then summons a giant flaming holy sword in mid-air. The small one says he had an inspiration and that if he uses his giant hand for one thing, the blonde man continues and says that the hand can wield his great and powerful holy sword. The two then shout together that this would be the ultimate combination of their great powers. The giant hand then grips the sword while the fighter asks not to be involved in this. With a cry of victory, the old man says he will take down the army and Soma to create a new hero. The man with glasses is seen on the ground, trapped by chains in the fighter, with his hair on fire. He then thinks that since they used the annihilation beam, the secret can no longer be hidden. The masked fighter wonders why the blonde man is lost in thought at a time like this. The scene then cuts to the full moon in the sky, showing that the night is still far from over. Elsewhere, number 7 climbs a cliff carrying number 3 on her back. The pair scales the vertical rock wall with impressive agility and strength. Their plan is to avoid the man with glasses and silently aim for the mountain's summit. They intend to launch a surprise attack on Soma, who suddenly looks up, startled.